Afternoon. I am excited to be here today. I look forward to giving you some tips and tricks. Okay, so let's get started. So just to give you a little precursor here, we are focused today on your sector, tourism and hospitality, and getting recruitment and immigration ready. So I'm Jessica MacDonald. I'm the Human Resources Advisor. My colleague Dani will be joining us if she's not here already. She might be stuck in traffic. Oh, she made it. Okay, awesome. So Dani will speak a little bit later. I will get started. And first, we're just going to look at a little brief agenda together. It's also been a minute since I've presented via webinar. So if I am clunky, it's because I'm inexperienced. Okay, look at that transition. So here's our agenda. I'm just going to basically run through it here quickly. So we do want this to be a practical, useful session for you, that you're not left, thinking about a lot of things that you then have to piece together later. There will be a bit of that, but there will be some practical information that you can actually take and use. So first of all, we'll go through some advice that I have to help you improve your recruitment strategy. Then I'm going to go through, not too much, but I'll show you where you can find them, links to practical resources and templates. Dani will take it from there, doing an overview of immigration pathways for the hospitality and tourism sector. Then followed by that, she will provide a little update on the National Occupational Classification System, that's the NOC, and then an overview of the Canadian language benchmark levels that will help you determine the minimum language required for English and French positions. Okay, here we go. This is where it gets into the fun stuff. Oh, I lied. It's actually about me first. So just wanted to give you a little bit of a sense of who I am and why I'm here before I start telling you a bunch of things. I work at the Cape Breton Partnership. I've been here since 2019. The first role I had is actually the role that Dani has now. So welcome, Dani. I hope you're enjoying it. I have a Bachelor of Arts from St. FX and a Bachelor of Education. So as you would maybe have guessed, I spent the first part of my professional life as a teacher. That wasn't quite the right fit for me. So I had to regroup and pivot, as they like to say now. And from there, I moved back to Sydney and did the HR Management Advanced Diploma at NSCC. I am pursuing my professional designation in HR, so that's where that little CPHR button comes from. It's kind of like becoming a professional accountant. There's CPAs for accountants. CPHR is the version for human resources professionals. My role at the partnership as a human resources advisor is internal. So I advise them internally, and then I also externally work with small, medium businesses around the island. I'm funded by the Regional Enterprise Networks, which means I cover the whole island. I'm located in Sydney, but I can travel as needed. So if you're a business located in Inverness and you want to get together, then you just let me know and we work that out together. What I do at the partnership as a human resources advisor is to provide employers in Cape Breton and Unama'ki with human resources related guidance and advice. The purpose of all that is to help themselves sustain and grow their business. I do that through covering the fundamental HR building blocks like policies and procedures, recruitment and retention. That's probably been the biggest, most demanding need lately. Selection and hiring, performance management, and more. I've had this job for about a year, so what I can do can kind of change based on the volume and the needs of employers out there. So now into a bit of a question, I suppose, first. So this is where I'm just going to ask you a little question. You can raise your hand. You can put your answer into the chat if you want, but I just want you to think for a moment, are job descriptions and job postings or advertisements the same thing? If you want to, let me see how I can see anyone. I don't like to talk just at you. I want you to feel like you're engaged. So you can think about that for a second. And here comes the answer. No, they're actually not. So they have similarities, yes, for sure. But they serve different purposes and they are themselves different. But how? So a job description and a job posting, again, not the same, but they have similarities. Some people do use them interchangeably. You might be in that position. That's not necessarily wrong. It just might cause you some hassles with your recruitment and also maybe retaining employees. So a job description, just to get a little technical for a second, that is an internal document. Internal, it's for your own organizational use. A job posting, obviously, is an external document. It's an advertisement. It's going out there to the public. A good job description, something that's super exhaustive, it has all kinds of details, tells you everything you need to know about a job, does not necessarily make a good job posting. A job posting should be to the point. It's a marketing document. Remember that. It is to market your position. So it needs to be a little bit different than the post. The post is super exhaustive, all the details, kind of boring, but very important for you as an employer to know exactly all of the things. You build your post off of that. So a job post should really pique the candidate's interest, because again, there's lots to read out there. We have to grab their attention. We have to force them to read our job ad. So we're going to need to use language that does that. But it also, the job ad itself, yes, it needs to be appealing and exciting, but it also needs to be accurate. So it can be hard as an employer to know, do I just include everything in my job post because I want to make sure that this is an accurate post? Probably not, because that can be really overwhelming. It could be a huge job post. You might lose the reader's interest before they even finish it, and then they don't get to apply. So in the post, you still need to have all those essential job elements, but you're not going to have every single detail. If you do a job post that piques the interest, it's really exciting, but it's not accurate, it doesn't include enough details, you may not attract those qualified candidates that you're looking for. My advice to each of you would be to first start by building a job description. Then once you have done that, that's definitely the harder piece. The job description is more difficult because it's so technical. But once you have that done, that's the first step and probably the biggest step, most time-consuming step to making a really effective job post, your marketing document that you're going to put out there so that people will want to apply to your jobs. Okay. Everyone loves to talk about writing a job description. I'm just going to tell you really briefly, in order to do it properly, there's a whole technical process. It's called job analysis. What is that? Well, it's the process of studying a job to determine which activities and responsibilities it includes, the relative importance of the job to other jobs in an organization, and then the qualifications that would be necessary for performance of the job. And importantly, the working conditions under which the work takes place. So an important concept of job analysis is that the job is what is being assessed, not the person doing the job. That is step one. Do never do that. You might be looking at qualities that that individual has that allows them to do the job well, but you need to focus on what the actual job is. You don't want to build a job around a person. You want a person to fit around the job. So I've scared you straight now. You know that job descriptions are important and they are different. Now I'm going to give you some practical stuff. So moving on, these headings sort of represent your basic heading of a job description. So the title, it's the formal title. Try as much as you can to not have super, a lot of hyphens, a lot of and this and that and slash this and slash that. When you're a small business, sometimes that's what you need to do because you can't afford to employ each individual person to do each job. But my, rule of thumb, usually 2 things combined are okay. If you get into 3 different positions and 4, that's where it gets really complicated. And what you'll know too, if you've ever been through the immigration journey, if you have a job that's too convoluted, it's not necessarily its own standalone thing, that can cause you some headaches for immigration as well. So as much as you can, narrow it down. Make sure you go and think about and make it clear in your job description, which again, this is your internal document. This is what you're building first for your own use. Make sure you include there who they report to. If there is any supervisory responsibility with the position, that should be clear too. So someone applying should have a sense that, I'm going to be in a position where I'm overseeing other people, what my authority is, to what extent I have control or, if I'm accountable for the work of other people, that should be noted in there too. A job overview, that's sort of your first little tiny paragraph before you get into the duties. And that's where you're going to go through just a 4 to 5 sentence description of the basic functions and scope of the job. Summarize that main purpose of the job and the prime reason for its existence. If you're struggling to do that, if you're struggling to summarize the main purpose of the job and the prime reason for its existence, I would really think long and hard about, you should be able to do that. You need to be able to do that, or else it's going to be really hard to convince someone else what the scope of the job is if you yourself can't really identify that. So again, this would be kind of like your next heading in your job description. You have your responsibilities and duties. Just going to take a drink for a second. I have the tendency of starting to speak at a rapid pace. So if I'm going crazy fast, Joanna, you let me know. So the duties and responsibilities, you're going to provide that bullet point list of the responsibilities of the job. Make sure you get the essential ones, not necessarily every single nitty-gritty thing, but the essential duties. State what is done and explain why and how. State the frequency of the duty. So if I need to answer the phone, is that am I answering the phone every single day? Is it all day? Is it once a week? How often is it? You should list them in order of importance. So the most important ones obviously near the top. Use complete sentences. Start your duty or responsibility with a verb. So an action word, like for example, answering the phone, that's one. Taking calls, directing people. If you're in the tourism and hospitality sector, that's probably a lot of, this is where I'm ad-libbing and I shouldn't do that because I'll just get lost. So stick to the script. Use the present tense. And super important, use simple and inclusive language. So no fancy vocabulary, just your basic language. Make sure it's inclusive. Try not to use gendered language like he, she. Stick to things like they. Okay. Next piece would be the qualifications. So you will provide a bullet list of the qualifications that are necessary. Remember that it's the necessary ones, not what would be great to have, but what is needed minimally for someone to fill the position. Examples would be things like education, experience, the specific knowledge, skills, and abilities, the personal characteristics. That one is important, and I'll highlight that a little bit later. I think especially for your sector, any certifications or licenses should be noted that are needed. And then again, in the working conditions, this is an important one, but it is important. It's often forgotten. You need to make sure that you describe any duties or responsibilities that have physical demands and also describe the physical environment in which work takes place. So if I am describing a kitchen position, you might want to note in there the sound, like it could be very noisy in there. So someone that has issues with that could be for them to know. And a sound issue in a kitchen is something that you may not really be able to avoid. It's kind of an inherent characteristic of the job. So you might not necessarily be able to accommodate someone that applies for a job that has some sort of something where they, excessive amounts of sound might trigger something. That would be an example of a bona fide requirement. Okay. And building off of that, just wanted to add this in here. I said a few things about bona fide and duty to accommodate, those sorts of things. Those are things that you should know as employers, what that means. This isn't really the focus of this session, so I didn't build much off of here, but I wanted to mention it and provide you with links because it's really important that you make sure when you're writing these job descriptions and postings that all of the job requirements are reasonable and made in good faith. So if you want to know more about that, I would highly suggest that you click on these links. So the protected characteristics go through all the things in Nova Scotia that we can't discriminate against. And then information for employers that goes through duty to accommodate and things like, there's no mandatory retirement age in Nova Scotia, things like that. So clearly this is important because you want to make sure that your job requirements are necessary for performing the job, those essential duties, and you have to make sure that they don't have a discriminatory impact. So an example, just to kind of bring this to life a bit, an example of a job requirement with a discriminatory impact would be something like listing, must be physically fit, can't be obese. That might sound a little bit wild, but I've literally seen that a week ago come across my desk. And to that employer, I had to kind of spell out, here's why that's super problematic language. And I think what you're really trying to say is something else, but let's think about what you're really trying to say and then say that. So if in your mind, you're hiring maybe a laborer, so they need to be able to do things like sit down, get up, move around, bend, do all those things, that's really what you're getting at. Because to be physically fit is a subjective definition. My idea of physically fit might be different than Joanna's. It could be different than Dani's. We all have a different one. In my mind, you need to have like a 6-pack, and that's not really feasible for a lot of people. So problematic for sure. How do you reword it to get at what you're really saying? Here's how. A requirement that would not pose a discriminatory threat here would be must be able to bend, kneel, push, pull, and lift up to 25 pounds frequently. So that doesn't say anywhere in there that you have to have a six-pack or they can't be a little bit chubby, because there's nothing wrong with that. And what does that have to do with your ability to do the job? Probably nothing. So don't get yourself caught in that situation. Look at this before it becomes a bigger deal. So if these are all brand new things to you and you've never seen anything like this before, I would take a second to just look through that. Okay, back to the important things. So I've gone through now what a job description kind of looks like, what the headings are, how you sort of build your own. There's a formal process. I'm not going to go into that today, but if you want to know more, you reach out to me. So for marketing the job posting, I'm just going to run through a few tips to help you do that more effectively. So you first want to make sure you have a really strong employer brand. So if your main thing is about being a sustainable employer, make that, and by sustainable, I mean environmentally. So if that's your main value, your main goal as an employer, make sure that that's clear in everything that you do. It's evident in your job posting. You're getting at that sort of, you're tying in the personal characteristic, which I'm stealing my next bullet point. You want to connect your company values to the ideal candidate's personal characteristics. And that might sound silly or, not important if you run a restaurant or a hotel or something like that, but all jobs are important jobs. And the people that we want to have in our jobs are the people that want to be there. So if you can connect on a deeper level to the individual in the role, something that'll, help them wake up in the morning and go to work and know what it's really all about, that can help with your attention piece and finding the people that have the same kind of values and beliefs that your organization does. When you're posting your job, you have to make sure you post in multiple places and you need to be online. The days are gone where you could just post it in your local community, go to a few job fairs. That's not going to work anymore. It's not a bad idea. Still, you should do those things as well, but you also need to make sure that you get online. The fact is that not everyone that we are going to employ already is here. They might be coming from somewhere else, which means we need to recruit in places where they are now. And the internet is a great way to do that. Make sure you give yourself time to recruit. It's not something that you can do without much thought or without much time. You do need to have a plan in place, and you want to give yourself time to have your job out there. So an absolute minimum would be 2 weeks, but I would aim higher than that. Try to get your job out there for at least a month in advance. That way you have a few weeks to see how it's doing. And if it's not doing well, you can readjust. You can pivot again, and you can find new ways of promoting and boosting it so that you can gain more applicants. You should embrace social media if you haven't already. So if your business doesn't have an account, I would recommend that you make one or find someone that can help you do that, especially considering some of the jobs in your industry are lower skilled jobs, things like housekeeping, for example. And so sometimes the people that might want to do those jobs might be people who, they're just getting started in their working lives. So who are those people? They're younger people. Oftentimes, where are younger people? They're on social media. Where should I be then? On social media. That way, my business, I can advertise through social media. I can put paid money behind it. It doesn't have to be a lot. And I can boost it. I can target my audience. It'll show up on people's feeds when they're just kind of scrolling through. And that's how you can kind of get to some people without them really, actively searching for jobs. It's just already coming up when they're on their phone or computer anyway. I've mentioned this before, using compelling language. So it should be simple language, but it should also be compelling. It should be convincing. Remember the tone, what you're trying to do. It's almost like a sale. You're trying to convince the person that this is an amazing job that they should apply for. Make sure that you include those core job elements. So again, not every single little detail, but the real meat of the job. Include that in your post, plus the information that candidates will want to know. Put yourself in their shoes. If you were looking for a job, what would you need to know? You're probably going to need to know what type of job it is. Is it full-time? Is it part-time? Is it permanent? Is it casual? Is it a term? Is it for one day? And again, the compensation and benefits. People want to know that. Not everyone likes to reveal what the compensation is, and there are reasons that people do and do not. It has become legislation in PEI, which is a neighboring province, so usually that means their legislation kind of comes over here eventually. In PEI, it is illegal for an employer to post a job without including what the wage is or the salary. So don't be surprised if that happens in Nova Scotia someday. It would be great to get in the habit now. And again, if you have a minimum wage job, maybe you're thinking that if I put that out there, no one will apply. I don't think that's the case. I think the people that are willing to work for minimum wage will apply, and those that aren't won't apply, and then they're not wasting your time. So you should know ahead of time what the compensation is. It might be a range based on whoever you get, and that's totally fine, but you should make that clear to the candidates when, in the job posting is what I'm trying to say. That should be clear. When it comes to benefits, I'm going to talk a little bit about that later. You want to promote the perks. Just want to say, though, I do understand that it might not be a bunch of big fancy health and dental, whatever. There's other things that you probably have going on that would be worth promoting. And the last thing I wanted to say, which I know you're all amazing at, is treating your customers really well. Treat your candidates like their customers. Treat them very well. Okay. This is just an example, just to kind of show you an image of what I just said in real life. This is his job description. I just grabbed it from the internet. It's for a line cook. This is a job description. If you look at it, you'll see it's not exciting. There's nothing in here that's super attention grabbing. The tone is pretty bland and boring, but it is detailed, and it's telling me that summary. I see the qualifications. I know what the responsibilities are. Starts with verbs. The physical demands are there. So, but again, if you look at that, are you like super motivated to apply? Probably not. There's not even an instruction of how to do that. So that's a job description. This is an example of a job posting. So it's from Walmart, a pretty big company. I'm sure they were able to do a super advanced job analysis, but just to point out a couple of things that show you that this is a posting. This is different. I'm now engaging the reader by bringing them into it. What you will be doing, not just plain old duties and responsibilities, blah, blah, blah. It's what you will be doing because you are going to apply and you're going to get it. And you're going to love it. The language, again, verbs, it's not every single thing, but it's the meat. We know where it is. We know what type it is. I would have preferred if they said what it was being paid, but we'll get there eventually. Okay, just click through a little bit more here. Won't spend a lot of time on this, but essentially another piece of the Walmart posting, you can tell that they went through a super vast job analysis because they have identified like every single example of how someone could end up being minimally qualified for this position. There's the technical degree, there's other degrees, there's experience, there's this, there's that. They've gone through it all. So they know there's multiple ways in which you could end up in this job and being really good at it. They've identified what their preferred qualifications are. So again, when you yourself are recruiting, you have to look for the minimums first. The preferred only comes into play when you're narrowing down your short list. That's how you determine between those top three who's going to get it. I'm not picking my short list based on these. That's based on this. Okay, so for the benefits, Walmart, obviously, big company, they can give you all these fancy things. If you can't, that's okay. I'd be surprised if you could. If you can, that's amazing. You might not have those resources, and that's fine. People that are applying for your jobs probably know that. However, you probably do have things, other benefits and perks that might not be monetary, but they're things that you would consider a bonus of working there. So for example, things like having a flexible hours, perhaps, depending on the workplace. Maybe there's on-the-job training. So maybe they don't need a formal degree, but you're going to actually train them how to do it. And that's all while they are at work. So it's paid training. That's a bonus. Maybe you have a super amazing supportive work environment. That's another bonus. Maybe there's discounts, bonus. So just think about those things that you can offer, because I guarantee there's something. Every organization has a perk or a benefit, even if it's not monetary. You just have to think it through. Okay, where should I post a job? That's a very good question. You could post your job in 100 different places. If your job posting doesn't grab the reader's attention or accurately reflect the position, you're probably going to struggle to recruit and retain people, which you know that now because I've been over it. But if you're looking for a simple kind of one size fits all answer for where I should post jobs, You're probably not going to like what I have to say, because it really depends. I know that's not popular and no one likes to hear it, but it's the truth. There's not a one-size-fits-all website that you could go to post all your jobs, and it's always going to give you what you're looking for. And the reason for that is because it really does depend on each individual job and what the qualifications are, what the skills, abilities, knowledge are needed. But the good news is that now that you have a little bit of an outline of how to go about figuring that out, you know that once you take the time, go through the job analysis, have your job description, that process will allow you to discover the types of education, the experience, the knowledge, the skills, and the abilities that are required to do that job. Then, once you know that, you can think about where those people are. Where are they? Where do they live? Where do they look for jobs? What do they do? So, for example, if you know you need a cook with formal culinary education, you should get in touch with the post-secondary institutions, not just maybe the ones that are super local, but culinary and PEI and the rest of Nova Scotia. Yes, target the ones that are in your immediate community, but think bigger too. Getting on social media, again, is important. And if it's something super high skilled, like maybe a chef, you could look at professional associations. Now, I know that sounded a little bit like, oh, she's not really going to tell us anything useful, but there is one thing that I do have to say that is useful as a place to post. And that's because you're all located in Cape Breton. So that means you are eligible to use the Cape Breton Job Board. This is a website that the partnership runs. It's one of our initiatives. It's an online job board specifically for positions that are in Cape Breton, Unama'ki. So you're not going to see anything posted on there for Halifax. You might see an employer that's maybe located in Halifax, but they have a remote position that's available, and someone from Cape Breton could have that. We allow them to post, but people looking to fill jobs that are physically located in other places of the province, we tell them, unfortunately, you can't post on this website because that defeats the purpose. So this is for anyone and everyone that is looking to live here, work here. They can create a job seeker account. They can upload their resume and their language test results. They'll get notifications when jobs are posted, matching their profile. And then for you, the employer, it's a great tool for you because it's free to use. And bonus, if you post on the website through our job board social media, so we have a Facebook, a LinkedIn, and a Twitter, we will share your jobs on those social media accounts too. So that will help you increase your reach. So that's a free tool for you to use that's available through the RENs. So I'd recommend that one. And then Nova Scotia Works is a great organization, and they have a HR toolkit. And in there, if you click this link, it will take you to their page that has all of their job description templates. It has some tips about writing a job post. There's job posting templates, job posting websites. Those are, I know I said you can't really identify based on, flatly, but there's some common ones, things like Indeed, Career Beacon, places like that. That, yes, you can post on there too. But if you want to really target the individual, I would look at it as a more, individual job basis, look at those skills, and then go where those people are. And then, of course, if you have any trouble with any of this and you would like to utilize my services, you feel free to contact me. My info will be later on. But for now, I will pass it over to Dani. Oh, Dani, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so you can share yours.
Sounds good. Let me just see if I can share. Hang on 2 seconds here. All right, everyone can see my screen.
We can.
All right. Hang on 2 seconds. Jess, if I do this, is everything still good?
Yep, we can see the right slide.
Okay, perfect. You don't see anything else?
Nope.
Great. All right, guys. So thank you for that, Jess. It was super informative. So I'm going to talk about immigration. I'm going to jam a whole lot of information into about 10 slides or so. So first of all, my name is Dani Mombourquette, and I am the Immigration Engagement Coordinator at the Cape Breton Partnership. A little bit about me. I have a background in human resources, specializing in recruitment and selection. So I have plenty of experience assisting with immigration streams for permanent residents. The immigration services at the partnership. So my role at the partnership is dedicated to providing guidance and assistance to employers and newcomers to navigate the different PR pathways. So these include the the Atlantic Immigration Program and different streams of the Nova Scotia Nominee Program. So AIP and NSNP, which I can also refer to as PMP. So they are the same interchangeably. I'm also able to help support AIP endorsements, and we'll get to what that means a little later, and NSNP nominations, as well as answer any questions on eligibility and documentation. Also part of the immigration services team at the partnership is Kelly McKinnon. She's pictured right there, and she is the labor market and immigration advisor. So she's able to consult with employers to identify options for seasonal businesses. She did do some presentations when there had that roadshow back in the end of 2022. And she's able to provide guidance on federal programming. So together we can support employers to fill labor gaps and help the employees navigate the Canadian immigration system. So if you're not already thinking about immigration, you probably should start. The Conference Board of Canada tells us that 100% of Canada's net population growth will be through immigration by 2035. So simply put, there's not enough people. There's not enough people being born. There's too many people dying. And the labor market shortage that you're experiencing now is only going to get worse. So Canada is aging. Cape Breton is aging even more. And we will be competing with the rest of Canada for newcomers. So how can we help? So the Atlantic Immigration Program. So it's the AIP. It is only relevant for full-time year-round employment. But the Atlantic Immigration Program is a program that helps employers recruit skilled foreign workers and international graduates to meet their labor needs. So this is an employer-driven program that builds on the success of the Atlantic Immigration Pilot Program, which closed in 2021. So as of January 2022, the permanent program came into play. So anyone that was previously designated under the pilot program would need to redesignate themselves under the permanent program. So a little bit about that. And of course, the little provinces are highlighted there. So a quick snapshot of what the AIP program looks like. So I won't go into a whole bunch of detail, but kind of see how it works. It's a three-step process. So first, the employer needs a designation, and that's a provincial jurisdiction. Once they're designated and they're ready to support an employee, there's the employer endorsement, which is also provincial. And then once they are approved by the province, it's a PR application, which the employee provides to the federal government. So with the designation, it is led by the employer. So the employer must meet certain criteria. There must be a connection to a settlement provider. They have to complete mandatory training. They apply online through the application, and then they're hopefully approved for the AIP designation. So now you're designated and you have an employee that you would like to support. Again, it's led by the employer. There is a job offer criteria that needs to meet the specifications. The employer needs to collect all the documents from the employee. The employer and employee creates a settlement plan through a provider that we have locally. Again, you apply online, and if approved, the employee becomes endorsed by the province. And at that time, the employee is able to apply for a work permit if they need to, if they are not on a work permit here in Canada, or they're outside of Canada. And they can apply for a permanent residency. And that is led by the employee when it gets to the federal portion. Some AIP employer documentation requirements. So in my role, I get a lot of questions from employers about how to fill out paperwork properly, because if it's not filled out properly, the province comes back, they ask questions. So it's kind of nice to get it right first. So I wanted to include some information as what is needed for the different streams. So for the designation information, you collect all the information for your business and then use the sample form for guidance. So that is online. and you can actually fill it out by hand. If you wanted to send it back to me, I can have a little peek to make sure everything's right, and then you send it off to the province. You need to research or ask for assistance on identifying NOC codes. So we'll get into that a couple slides down, what a NOC code actually means and how it's relevant. But you can always reach out to me. I can help you find the best NOC code for the position. You apply online through the portal located on the Nova Scotia Online Services webpage. You create a profile, and then you complete the mandatory onboard training and the cultural competency training. So that's to get designated. The wait time is about 3 months to get from start to finish. Of course, that can vary, but it's about a 3-month wait to get your business designated through the AIP. So now you're designated and you're ready to support an employee. What do you do? So the employer responsibility is uploading everything to the site, but they do need to actually collect information from the employee as well. So the employer responsibility is a position information form. So it's online, it's called an IMM 0157, and you're gonna put all the employees' information and your business information on the form. You would need to get a position description, which is why Jessica said that they're so important to have a job description, because they're gonna wanna see that the position that they've hired for actually fits the roles that this employee is doing. A conditions of employment letter is like a reference letter saying that this employee worked at this position for this time to this time. This is their salary. These are their responsibilities. These are any benefits that they have. A signed offer letter, an employer registration certificate that says you're able to hire skilled foreign workers, and recruitment efforts if required. So if they don't have an open work permit and they need to get one, you would need to show proof that you've advertised the job minimum for 4 weeks on 3 different recruitment platforms. So that's the employer responsibility. And then the employee would also need to provide you, the employer, with their dependent information, their work experience, the language test assessment, which is valid within 2 years of the application, an education completion letter from a Canadian university, or an educational credential assessment, and a settlement plan. So it's a lot, but I'm always here to be able to walk you through the process. So the Nova Scotia nominee program is a little simpler. It's a 2-step process, and it's done by the candidate. So the employer only has to give some information to the employee, and then they would go off and they would apply themselves. So it first starts out provincially. So there's a nomination application to the province. If that's approved, then the individual gets to apply federally for their PR application. So again, led by the candidate, they apply to LSI, and the eligibility depends on the stream requirements. So there are 8 different categories under the provincial immigration economic class. However, we're only going to focus on 2 that are most common for our local organizations for tourism and hospitality. That would be the skilled worker class and the occupations in demand class. So what are the differences? So the eligibility for a skilled worker is that you must have a full-time permanent job offer from a Nova Scotia employer, have 1 year of work experience related to the job, and if it's semi-skilled or low-skilled workers, you must be working with that employer for at least 6 months. You have to be 21 to 55, minimum high school diploma. You have to have the appropriate training, skills, and accreditations for the job, and show enough financial resources to successfully settle in Nova Scotia. So this really helps the skilled worker program really helps employers recruit foreign workers and recently graduated international students whose skills are needed in Nova Scotia. The current PR processing time is about 18 to 24 months, which is a good retention tool for employers because the employee needs to work with you with the entire duration of the process, start to finish. So until they get their permanent residency, and if you have endorsed them or supported them, they need to keep employment with you full time. And it's, again, a candidate-led pathway to PR that's dependent on their job. So the employee actually applies to the province. This one is the occupations in demand stream. These are typically a lower skilled level position that are in demand for the workforce, but they do change depending on what's needed. So currently right now, the occupations in demand for Nova Scotia, the eligibility is you need to have a full-time permanent job offer in the following fields: a nurse aide, food and beverage server, counter attendant, kitchen helper, light duty cleaner, transport truck driver, heavy equipment or construction trade helpers and laborers. So a little different from the skilled worker because they are a lower skilled job, and this is what we are currently looking for in Canada. Again, you have to have 1 year of work experience, 21 to 55 years old, high school diploma, have the appropriate training and skills, and show enough financial resources. And same as the previous, PR processing time is the same, which is that good retention tool for employers. So you know you're at least going to have that employee with you for 2 years. Okay, and the documents required. So as you can see, it's much less employer heavy in involvement than the AIP program, which is also a great program, but it really depends on your business and who you have to administer these tools. So for the NSNP, you would need to supply the candidate with an NSNP 200 form, which is located online. Again, a job description, conditions of employment, signed offer letter, copy of the employer registration certificate, also known as an ERC, and have that recruitment efforts if required, if they do need to apply for a work permit. So in the next 2 slides, I just wanted to quickly go over the tier system. So within each of the tiers, there's NOC codes. And that, again, as Jess said it's a national occupation classification. So that corresponds to a particular job. So there are a few things to note about job offers, NOC codes, and their relation to salary. So NOC codes correspond to the duties, responsibilities, and requirements for the job. So the employee must be doing 50% of the duties that are reflected in the NOC code. And employees must be paid minimum salary for the position offered in order to qualify for the PR stream. So I just kind of wanted to show you what that looks like and how you find a NOC code. So let's see if this is going to work. See if I can click on this link and if it will bring me.
Dani, I may have eaten up too much time in my first half.
Okay,
So
I'll hurry up.
just to give Lynn her time.
Absolutely. You can see my screen here. So this is the National Occupation Classification. So I'm going to type in the NOC code.
I don't think we can see it, Dani. We're still seeing
No,
the
okay.
slide.
So maybe for a lack of time, we'll just skip that part. And if anyone does want to, oh my gosh, if anyone does want to click on these links here, this will bring you to the NOC code where you can find exactly what codes are used. And this brings you to what wages correspond with that. So we'll just quickly go through the rest of the slides here. So the new NOC system was introduced in November 16th of last year. Previous to this, job codes were described as 0A, B, C, D, but now they're categorized by a tier system. So for the AIP, the tiers that are included, which again corresponds with the NOCs, is a tier 0 to 4. For the skilled worker, it's a tier 0 to 5. And for the occupations in demand, the targets are the lower skilled jobs, again, which is a tier 3 to 5. So what does that mean? So this here is kind of a snapshot of some tier jobs for the hospitality and tourism industry. So a tier 0 is management jobs. So that's like your restaurant and food service managers, accommodation service managers. There's nothing really for a tier 1 in this particular sector because there are occupations that require a university degree, such as like doctors, nurses, engineers. A tier 2 would be occupations that usually require a college diploma, apprenticeship training of 2 years or more, or supervisory occupations. So those are your food service supervisors, accommodation and travel, tourism supervisors, housekeeping, cleaning supervisors, and chefs. Tier 3, they usually require a diploma, less than 2 years apprenticeship training, or more than 6 months of on-the-job training. We're looking at cooks and bakers. Tier 4 are occupations that usually require a high school diploma or several weeks of on-the-job training, front desk clerks, hostess, recreational guides. And a tier 5 is the occupations that usually need a short-term work demonstration, food and beverage servers, food counter attendants, dishwashers, housekeeping, so those occupations in demand. Just to note here, remember, it's not always about the job title for the NOC, it's about the duties. So think about what they're actually doing when you're considering a job description to try to find what particular NOC is going to be used for that position. Quickly here, Understanding the Canadian language benchmark. This is a lot, but basically the CLBs is a framework for assessing adult English as a second language. So 1 to 4 is simple language. So when you talk about having a language assessment, if you get a CLB 1 to 4, it's just simple spoken communication. CLB 5 to 8 is your moderate spoken communication, and 9 to 12 is being in a job that requires you to have complex spoken communication. The majority of the jobs that qualify for the PR streams are in a CLB 4 and a CLB 5. That's the minimum requirement. So I know that was a lot, and that was kind of quick, as immigration is definitely not an easy subject, as it depends on so many different variables. But when my position at the partnership, I'm able to help and guide employers through the process. I can provide a hands-on support, acting like almost a middle person between the employer and the employee. For the AIP endorsements, I can assist you and the candidate gather all the documents to provide, as well as with the PMP applications to make it easy and stress-free. And I can also walk you through the designation process, and I'm here to answer any questions that you may have about the program. And thanks so much for having me, Jessica.
Yep, I am here. I am here for you. If you have any HR related questions, if you have policies you want to check, if you're just struggling to recruit and you want a bit more one-on-one advice, that's why I'm here. I am free. Let me know if you need anything.